Brooklyn by Chance. Chapter 1. Engaging Introduction. Mara's heart pounded as she stepped off the bus in Brooklyn. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh bagels from a nearby shop. She clutched her worn-out notebook, filled with English phrases she had practiced 100 times. "Hello, I'm Mara. I am looking for a job," she whispered under her breath, her accent thick but determined. She had dreamed of this moment for years, leaving Chile to start fresh in America. But now, standing in the middle of a busy New York street, she felt impossibly small. People rushed past her, their conversations a blur of English words she couldn't quite catch. Her stomach twisted with nerves. How am I supposed to get a job when I can barely speak the language? Taking a deep breath, she reminded herself why she was here. One step at a time. Just find a place. Ask if they're hiring. That's all. She straightened her shoulders and scanned the storefronts. Her eyes landed on a cozy little cafe with a handwritten "Help Wanted" sign in the window. Her heart leaped. This is it. Mara adjusted her bag, repeated her practiced line in her head, and pushed open the door. The scent of coffee and warm pastries enveloped her. The soft hum of chatter filled the air. She took one shaky step inside, unaware that the next few minutes would change everything. Chapter 2. Setting and Context. A small bell jingled as Mara stepped into the cafe. The warmth inside was a sharp contrast to the chilly Brooklyn streets. The air smelled like cinnamon, espresso, and freshly baked bread. Wooden shelves lined the walls, filled with colorful mugs and jars of coffee beans. A few customers sat at cozy tables, typing on laptops or chatting quietly over steaming cups. Mara clutched her notebook tightly. Her heart pounded in her chest. Okay, just ask if they're hiring. You can do this. Before she could open her mouth, a man behind the counter turned toward her. He was in his late 20s with dark circles under his eyes and a green apron dusted with flour. His name tag read Jake. He barely looked at her before reaching under the counter and pulling out a neatly folded apron. "Oh, you must be the new girl," he said, tossing the apron in her direction. "Here's your apron. You start now." Mara froze. Her mouth went dry. Wait. What? Jake didn't seem to notice her confusion. He was already moving, grabbing a tray of coffee cups and sliding them onto the counter. "You're on register," he said, nodding toward the cash register. "Just keep the line moving, okay?" Mara stared at him, her brain scrambling to catch up. Did he just give me a job? Without an interview? Without even asking my name? She opened her mouth to explain. "I don't actually work here." But the words got stuck. What would she even say? Her English wasn't strong enough to explain the mistake quickly. Customers were already lining up. Jake raised an eyebrow. "What are you waiting for? Let's go." Mara's pulse raced. She had no idea how to work a cash register. She barely knew how to take orders in English. But people were waiting, and Jake was already too busy to notice her panic. What do I do? Then she made a decision. She would go along with it. Mara swallowed her fear, grabbed the apron, and slowly tied it around her waist. Her hands trembled, but she forced herself to breathe. Maybe I can figure it out as I go. Maybe this is my chance. She stepped up to the register, staring at the first customer. A middle-aged woman in a thick coat, holding a phone in one hand, and a purse in the other. The woman gave her an impatient look. "I'd like a large cappuccino, please." Mara's stomach dropped. Chapter 3. The Central Event. Mara's mind went blank. She had practiced English for months, but now, standing face to face with a real customer, the words vanished. The woman's expectant gaze made her chest tighten. Think, Mara. You know this. Her eyes darted to the register. It had dozens of colorful buttons, each labeled with drink names, but the words blurred together. She swallowed hard and forced a nervous smile. Sorry. Can you repeat? She asked, her accent thick. The woman sighed, but before she could answer, Jake swooped in, his hands moving fast. Large cappuccino, he repeated smoothly, pressing the right buttons without hesitation. The machine beeped, and a receipt, printed out instantly. Jake turned to Mara and smirked. See? Easy. Mara nodded quickly, pretending she understood. But her hands were clammy, and her heartbeat pounded in her ears. The next customer stepped up, a tall man with a beanie and glasses. Can I get a double espresso? Mara hesitated, glancing at Jake. He was too busy steaming milk to notice her. She had to do this herself. Her fingers hovered over the register. She spotted the word espresso and took a deep breath before pressing it. The screen showed the price. She looked up, forcing another smile. $5? The man nodded and handed her cash. She scrambled to put the money in the drawer and gave him his change. I did it. A small wave of relief washed over her, but the line was still long, and Mara had no time to celebrate. The next person was already waiting. Can I get an oat milk latte? Mara froze again. Oat milk? What's oat milk? She felt her face flush. Her brain searched for the words, but nothing came. She had never learned this vocabulary. The customer frowned. Oat milk, he repeated, slower this time. Mara felt the heat of embarrassment rising in her cheeks. She wanted to disappear. Then, Jake's voice cut through the moment. Here. He grabbed a carton from the counter and held it up. This is oat milk. Mara's eyes widened. Leche de avena. Now she understood. She nodded quickly and pressed the right buttons. Good, Jake said, tossing the carton back in place. You'll get the hang of it Something about his casual confidence made Mara feel a little steadier. Maybe she could learn, just like this, by listening, watching, and figuring things out as she went. She took a deep breath and turned to the next customer. "Hello, what do you like?" Jake snorted. "It's what would you like?" Mara bit her lip, embarrassed. But before she could feel too bad, the next customer smiled. "A mocha, please." Mara grinned back. She was learning, and for the first time since she arrived in New York, she felt like she belonged. Chapter 4. Inspiring Conclusion. By the end of her shift, Mara was exhausted, but in the best way possible. Her apron was dusted with coffee grounds, her notebook was filled with new words, and her brain buzzed with everything she had learned. Jake leaned against the counter, watching her tie a loose knot in her apron. "Not bad for your first day," he said with a smirk. Mara let out a small laugh. "I survive?" Jake chuckled. "You survived." He grabbed a cloth and wiped down the counter. "You're catching on fast. Just keep listening and repeating. That's how you learn." Mara nodded. That's exactly what she would do. Every mistake was a lesson. Every new word was a step forward. She had walked into the cafe by accident, but maybe, just maybe, this was exactly where she was supposed to be. As she stepped outside, the city lights flickered around her. She pulled out her notebook and flipped to a fresh page. At the top, she wrote, "What would you like?" Then, with a smile, she added, "I belong here." She closed the notebook, took a deep breath, and walked home, ready for whatever came next. The end.